Hey guys, we're going to get started today reviewing Chapter 8, talking about planned change. The direction of in the 21st century healthcare organizations is to look at organizational restructuring, quality improvement, and employee retention. Those are the three major things in the focus of the 21st century. Qualities of change agents are that you're a visionary, a risk taker, very flexible when it comes to change, excellent at communication, creative, sensitive, and current in what's going on in healthcare and society today. Kurt Lewin's change theory is the unfreezing. That's the change agent convinces members of the group to change, or guilt, anxiety, or concern are elicited. There's movement. The change agent identifies plans and implements appropriate strategies, ensuring that driving forces exceed restraining forces. And then refreezing. So the change agent assists in stabilizing the system change so that it becomes integrated into the status quo. You want to unfreeze, get everybody moving, get them worried about what's going on, then keep the movement going, identify the plan, get the plan in place, and then refreeze it. Make them all stop and say, okay, this is where we're at, let's stabilize it, we're good to go. Lewin's driving and restraining forces. The driving would be the facilitator, person that helps forces that pushes that system towards the change. And then the restraining are those barriers, the forces that pull the system away from the change. The driving and restraining forces, you have your goal is to return to school. This is a good example. So forces driving to reach the goal, the opportunity for achievement, status and social gratification, enhanced self-esteem, family supportive of efforts, and the pay increase. All great reasons to go back to school. Some forces that are restraining from reaching that goal would be low energy level. You don't certainly feel like it. It's a lot of work, limited financial resources. It costs a lot of money to go back to school. Maybe you don't want to take out student loans. Unreliable transportation. I don't have a car. I can't get back and forth. And then maybe your time with your family is already limited. So that's something that you have to give up. You're thinking about the personal time that you're going to be giving up to go back to school. This is an example of those driving and restraining forces, almost like a pros and cons kind of. Lewin identified several rules that should be followed in implementing change. Those are that change should only be implemented for good reason. Change should always be gradual. All change should be planned and not sporadic or sudden. All individuals who may be affected by the change should be involved in the planning for the change. We talked about this in Chapter 7, how important it is to make sure that when somebody is affected by that, they need to be involved in the planning. So strategies for change, or stages of change model, this is the Burroughs and Needs strategy. Stage 1 is the contemplation. Then stage 2 is the contemplation. Stage 3 is preparation. Stage 4 is action. And stage 5 is the maintenance. So that pre-contemplation is that there's no current intention to change. Stage 2, when you moved on to the contemplation, and you're considering making it. You aren't for sure, but you're thinking about it, knowing that there needs to be a change made. Then in stage 3, there's the intent to make a change in the near future. So you're preparing, you know what's going to happen. And then stage 4, you actually have the individual modifies your behavior, his or her behavior. And then 5, you've made the change. You need to maintain that, and try to avoid to relapse. So classic change strategies include rationale, empirical strategies used when there is little anticipated resistance to the change or when the change is perceived as reasonable. You have normative, which is reductive strategies. These use group norms and peer pressure to socialize and influence people so that change will occur. Power is the last one, and that's coercive strategies. They feature the application of power by legitimate authority, economic sanctions, or political clout for the change agent, using that power to make the change. So a nurse manager is attempting to restructure the unit to prevent understaffing of the nurses. Nurses agree this is a needed change. What type of change strategy would be the most effective? Rationale, that empirical strategies, normative, reductive strategies, power, coercive strategies, or D, none of the above. The rationale or empirical strategies is your best bet. And the reason is when using the rational empirical strategies, the change agent assumes that resistance to change comes from a lack of knowledge. So, I'm wanting to change the unit. I think that these people, they don't like, instead of just being a power driven, like I'm the manager, I'm gonna make this happen. It's okay, well, let's change their knowledge. Maybe it'll change their reason for not wanting to change. So it's from lack of knowledge and that humans are rational beings who will change when given functional information documenting the need for the change. This type of strategy is used when there is little anticipated resistance to change or when the change is perceived as reasonable. So reminder, because change disturbs the homeostasis or balance of the group, resistance should always be expected. You remember you hear a lot of times, nurses don't like change. And it's kind of funny, it's very true. But healthcare is one of the most changing industries in the world, but it is very true. There is always a resistance to change. Complex adaptive systems change theory. This suggests that the relationship between elements and agents within any system is nonlinear, and that these elements are the key players in changing settings or outcomes. Olson and Olgang, I never say that name correctly, suggests that the self-organizing nature of a human interaction and a complex organization leads to surprising effects. So the chaos theory, which I'm sure some of you have heard of this, is really about finding the underlying order in apparently random data. Determining the underlying order, however, is challenging, and the order itself is consistently changing. Changes in outcomes are not proportional to the degree of the change in the initial condition. Organizational aging is also something to consider. Organizations progress through developmental stages. As an organization ages, structure increases to provide greater control and coordination. The young organization is characterized by high energy movement and virtually consistent change and adaptation. Aged organizations have established turf boundaries, function in an orderly and predictable fashion, and are focused on rules and regulations. So tell whether the following statement is true or false. The young organization is characterized by low energy and resistance to change. True or false? This is false. The young organization is characterized by high energy, movement, and virtually constant change and adaptation. Because it's new, it's having to constantly change. Planned change versus accidental change. Regardless of the type of change, all major change brings feelings of achievement, pride, loss, and stress. Planned change, in contrast to accidental change or change by drift, is change that results from a well thought out and deliberate effort to make something happen. So, which emotions are commonly associated with change? Pride, stress, loss, achievement, or all of the above? It would be all of the above. 3 good reasons for change include change to solve some problem, change to make work procedures more efficient, and change to reduce unnecessary workload. Resistance, the natural and expected response to change. Individuals' resistance typically depends on 4 things: their flexibility to change, their evolution of the immediate situation, or their evaluation, of the immediate situation, their anticipated consequences of the change. So how is this going to affect me? What's going to happen with this? Their perceptions of what they have to lose and gain. This is a big one. So, if they feel it's gonna cause them to lose something, they'll have some even more resistance. If they can see the need and see that it may help them, then maybe you'll find some less. And that's why it's really important to have that knowledge base and the education, so people understand the importance and reason for change. So tell whether the following statement is true or false. For change to be effective, it should be intermediate and sweeping. True or false? False. Change should be gradual and carefully planned. Oh, sorry. Rather than sudden. Next question. Presenting employees with pros and cons of a new system to be implemented is an example of which type of strategy? A, rationale, B, normative, or C, power? That'd be rationale. Remember that knowledge, there's knowledge. A rational change agent uses empirical reasoning as a tool for initiating change. Resistance to change. Perhaps the greatest factor contributing to the resistance encountered with change is the lack of trust between the employee and the manager, or the employee and the organization. This is huge. If there is a comfortable trust between the employee and their manager and they feel safe within the organization, they're more apt to be okay with the change. But if they feel uneasy with the manager or the status of the organization, they're going to put their blinders up and their that road up and be like, okay, why are we doing this? Why is there a need for change? Because they don't have that trust. Involvement in change. Whenever possible, all those who may be affected by a change should be involved in the planning for that change. We talked about that in our last chapter when we talked about planning and how important it is for those that are actually doing the process to be the ones involved in the planning. So if you're over something, making a change within an organization or even a unit, if you're the manager, you want to bring in some of those direct care staff. Say we're wanting to change the times vital signs are done on our unit. We do them currently at 8, 12, and 4. And we're thinking with our workflow, it might work better to do them at 9, 1, and 5. That's what management is thinking. However, when you go and talk to those patient care assistants and the RNs, we realize, well, no, it really would affect their workflow. They need blood pressures done prior to administering certain medications. So waiting until 9 a.m. to do a morning blood pressure may affect their med passing abilities and delay patient care. Those are things that would all need to be considered, and the person that would have the highest level of knowledge in that would be the one doing the actual act. It's really important to make sure that when you're in a leadership and management role, that you're bringing those to the table to help make decisions, the ones that are actually having to have the action and do that's going to be impacted the most by the change. So when information and decision making are shared, subordinates feel that they have played a valuable role in the change. This also helps them have the buy-in. When they feel like they've had a role in the change, then they're more likely to be a supporter and then also get their fellow employees and coworkers on board as well. And it'll make the ease with the change much easier. So integrating leadership and management functions in planned change. The manager, mechanic who implements the planned change. The leader is the inventor or creator of the planned change. Both leadership and management skills are necessary in planned change. And that's it for chapter 8. Thanks, guys.